Fat is essential. It's essential to build our cells, the cell membranes, our nervous system. It's necessary for inflammation, to build our sex hormones and steroid hormones. So your cortisol, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, um, your vitamin D. So all of these things need fat.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and today my guest is Sarah Franklin. You may know her as In the Buff Wellness on Instagram. Sarah is a nutritionist and a nutrition and neuromuscular practitioner. And today we're going to get into all kinds of good stuff about hormones and everything you want to know about losing weight. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad you could join me. So let's talk about your story first and the things that you healed and what made you become a carnivore and eat only meat.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty amazing. I mean, growing up, I ate low fat. My mother was actually in healthcare, was a nurse practitioner. So we ate meat and things like that. It wasn't like we didn't, but it was low fat, lots of vegetables, all the standard advice. And I was fairly thin, but you always wanted to be thinner, like in high school, and I was a cheerleader. So there was pressure to be thin and, a certain size, as there is even more probably now with social media. But
Sure.
at that time it was teen magazine, but and it was something that it's always been a passion of mine. I wanted to be in health and fitness. I was thinking about the medical field with my mother, being in that, but it was kind of a little bit haywire. And I actually got into pharmaceutical sales. So I was in pharma for about 20 years. And I thought I knew everything, how the body worked, and, all the things that I educated doctors on, the endocrine system for diabetes, cardiology. Like I taught them about medicine and how the body worked. So I knew how the body worked. I just didn't know you could do things to prevent it from stopping working, if that makes sense. But I did that, and I was following all the guidance myself, where I was eating, I had just lost a lot of weight via Weight Watchers, and I felt really great. But then all of a sudden my blood pressure was through the roof, and my doctors were like, what are you doing? And, I had all these other issues. I started having ovarian cysts, and I actually had one rupture and went to the ER, which was awful and very painful. Just other thing. And then, okay, maybe we need to take you off the pill. Maybe that's why. And come off the pill. And now I have horrible acne, and I'm in my, I'm an adult. I shouldn't have these problems. So even though I had lost this weight, I'm like, what is going on? Everything should be better. And I didn't understand there was underlying insulin resistance, which is what I know now. And, all the other things that were happening. So I took blood pressure medication for a while in my early, late 20s, early 30s. I thought that's kind of what you had to do. And it was just what it needed to be. And then I finally started listening, somebody had mentioned the keto diet, and I think I watched The Magic Pill, and it's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, and started eating differently, eating higher fat. I always ate protein because I've done all the cleanses, and I pretty much ate only lean protein for a long time, especially if you've ever done Weight Watchers or some calorie restriction. It's eat really lean and eat all your veggies, and you can eat anything in moderation. So I would have popcorn and wine and still lose weight. I mean, not exactly the best health plan, but it will work, not composition wise. But so it had been started there, and I couldn't believe how much better I felt. My blood pressure got better. I then so about 6 months, like I had lost a little bit of weight. I'm like, this seems much better. I need to eat like this. I didn't start out doing it exactly the right way, and I did not eat enough fat. So I lost a substantial amount of hair, transitioning from like standard American, all the things, to just no carbs, no fat. Don't do that ever. And so there were some hiccups, but I still felt so much better. And then World Carnivore Month started, and I thought it was kind of crazy. Like, what? Dr. John Baker, what are you talking about? And did that and I could not believe the differences. My skin cleared, my blood pressure normalized, like everything changed. My acne was better, my skin got better, my blood pressure, like I said, normal. Digestion had been an issue most of my life of just bloating and things, and that went away. So there's so much changed, and it made me question everything.
Mhm.
And knowing all the things I knew from my medical training and pharma and with physicians and all of that, I just started learning and learning and learning. And that's where I said, at some point I want to go back to school and I want to do something else, because I know you can make major changes. And there are medications that are life saving and people need and can use,
Mhm.
but there's so much you can do before that. And there's so much you can do in addition that maybe you don't need those. And less people wouldn't have to rely on that. So about 3 months ago, I quit my full-time job and started doing nutrition full-time holistically. And I focus on carnivore hormones. And it's been really rewarding, and as well as my own health journey, but seeing others thrive eating mostly meat.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, first of all, what meat can do for people. And then the idea that the doctors just automatically prescribe a medication is the part that bothers me so much. I do think there's a place for modern medicine. Obviously, I think they can heal people, they can save people's lives.
Yeah.
But I think there should always be a step that comes before the medication, whether it's supplements or food. And I think the doctors are just like, they think people just don't listen. And I know that that's true. People just don't listen when it comes to nutrition. And it's because of the addiction that comes first with all of those processed foods. So, as a pharmaceutical rep, when you did that, did you feel like you were pressuring the doctors to prescribe medicine? I mean, is that how that really works?
No, it's definitely not and I know that there's maybe somebody out there that does things wrong, but it was an education, right? It was like, this is the disease, this is how it works. They know that, but it's a reminder because they just get into their habits of how they do and how they've treated since when they went to school. But now there's maybe a new therapy. So you're teaching them all about the product, how it works in the body, any of the side effects, all of that, and where is a better place to try it over something else. And like I said, there's some that it can be good. And I just think that the bigger problem is they are taught nutrition. It's about 8 or 10 hours. It's a very small amount of time, and it's wrong. And we know that it's not low fat, medium only lean protein like fish and chicken and those type of things. So a lot of them are overweight and sick. And I have clients, former physicians and nurses that I worked with all the time that are like, what do you do? What is your blood work? Like my cardiologists were like, because I bring my lunch into the office, I would order food that was what I thought was healthy. I
Yeah.
was the bacon lady. I brought breakfast for lunch a lot. I brought breakfast a lot with, eggs and bacon and sausage. And they're like, oh, we're to cardiologists. And so I could eat it. And they all wanted to know my cholesterol. They all want to know all my numbers. And my triglycerides, the last time I had them done were 15, which if they are very, very low. And they were shocked. Like, what? And this is what you eat? Like, this makes no sense. So that's why I wanted them to understand, like, you have been not given the full picture. Like, and a lot of them were very open. It's just they don't have the time. People are so sick
Mhm.
and need so much when they have 15 minutes to go in and be like, do this for your diabetes, this for this, don't eat better, do this, and write all these prescriptions. Do you have any questions? And they're out the door. So it is not enough time to learn all that yes, there's a better way, but they didn't always have the time to relearn what, we know now, which is red meat's not bad, saturated fat is not bad. Those aren't the problems, it's the sugar.
Yeah. And I read somewhere, or somebody told me, that it can take 20 years for the current research to catch up and be at the front lines with the doctors and stuff. So the information on ketogenic diets and or the carnivore diet or just a low carb diet in general, that information hasn't made it to our doctors yet. And that even when it does, though, those doctors don't really have time. Like you just said, they have patients they are in, and I think there should be a requirement for doctors. Maybe there is, but there should be a requirement for doctors to do a certain amount of continuing education every year where they have to take 2 weeks off, and go to some sort of continuing education where they're learning new research and new science. Does something like that exist
Yeah,
already?
they do have to do things like that. Unfortunately, it's paid for by a
Yeah.
lot of pharmaceutical, like, a lot of those are sponsored, not all of it, but, there's definitely conflicts of interest. Like, if you design a study from Pepsi to say, "Can you exercise more to mitigate the effects of Pepsi?" Like, they're already trying to prove that this is what we want to happen. So
Mhm.
let's make this study in a design that, we can make it look like Pepsi's good for you. So,
Mhm.
uh there's definitely a lot of
Yeah.
conflicts in there, and yeah, like you said, they don't have the time, and even for a new medication, there's gonna be skeptical, which they should, because there's not long-term research when something comes out, even with a new drug. There's just not. You don't have 20 years, and then you look back and, oh, something like for heartburn now could potentially cause cancer, like, 25 years later. So, these are things that they're skeptical of, that a lot of times when they're trained, that's kind of what they're comfortable doing, and it
Yeah.
only the newer physicians are learning what's happening now and current now, and some of the older physicians are a little bit harder to change their
Yeah,
practice.
and I get it. It's easier for the doctor to just to prescribe a medication, and it's easier for a patient to just take the medication than it is to change their lifestyle. I
Yeah.
get that, but the only way people are going to get better is to actually change their lifestyle.
Yes.
So let's talk about hormones. So you mentioned a little while ago about how your hair fell out when you switched over to a high protein diet from, a healthy standard American diet or a Weight Watchers type of diet. So can you explain why that happens for people?
Yeah, so, we all have we have certain hormones in our body that work all together. So, if there's a problem in one area, another area is going to compensate. And that's really why I do a holistic approach, because if you're not sleeping, there could be all these other things affected and downstream. So, when I switched from an energy source of carbohydrates for my body, which my body was used to burning carbs all the time, and my insulin's very high. If my insulin level is very high, I can't tap into my own body fat. Insulin locks down body fat. So all of a sudden, to then have no sugar and my insulin's still high, my body was like, "What are you doing to me?" Here comes cortisol, stress hormones. I'm breaking down my muscle tissue probably, and it's catabolic, so it's stealing nutrients probably mostly from my muscles, but that is stress, and that response was just, my body was not happy, and no energy from fat, or not enough. Like, if you are switching a fuel source, because protein is a non-negotiable of what you need to build and repair and grow and maintain muscles, but your energy sources are fat or carbohydrates. And if you're not getting enough fat and you cut your carbohydrates, well, then now you can have a lot of stress, and that's not going to work very well. Or at least especially not long term. And in the first month, I had lost a ton, I mean, just tons of hair was coming out, and it was awful. And I didn't understand what was happening. And people are like, "You need more protein. You need more protein." I'm like, I am eating so much freaking protein. Like, I was eating enough, exactly what I probably have now. But when you're only eating lean protein, and you're still like chicken breast and pork chops, and I didn't have butter on the plate, and I was still eating some veggies with, it was just, oh, I had a little scoop of almond butter on it, or when I was keto, or I had, that is not enough. So it was, the hormones are in charge. And if you're not working with them, you're going to make things a lot harder on yourself.
Yeah. So why is the fat so important? Because our brains need fat, our cells needs fat. Like, explain that for people. Why is the fat so important? Because so many people switch to like a keto diet, and we have this mental thing
Yes.
ingrained in us from when we were small about how fat is bad for us. And so I
Yeah.
find a lot of people on a ketogenic diet that aren't really on a ketogenic diet. They think they
Right.
are because
Yeah.
they're not eating a lot of carbs, but you
Yep.
really can't survive healthily on mostly protein. Why is that?
No, so you need fat. There's actually studies they call rabbit starvation. If you only eat lean protein, like, you could actually die in a couple weeks. Like, that's not bad. It was, people only eating rabbit is where that came from. But
Mhm.
fat is essential. It's essential to build our cells, the cell membranes, our nervous system. It's necessary for inflammation, to build our sex hormones and steroid hormones. So cortisol, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, your vitamin D. So all of these things need fat and then cholesterol. And if you don't have that, you're going to have the body's just going to go haywire. These are just essential to life. And if you cut them out, and we've been told we don't need them, and it's just absolutely wrong. That it's bad advice. Very bad.
Yeah. So let's talk about weight loss for people, because that's such a hot topic, because let's face it, 60% of people or something need to lose weight. And so what are your recommendations for people who are trying to lose weight on a low carb, ketogenic, and carnivore diet? What kind of like macros do you recommend? How much fat versus how much protein?
Yeah. So most people find me for weight loss. That seems to be like the number one client concern that I have.
Of course.
And rightly so. Like that's kind of where people start. And then they're like, oh, by the way, yeah, I don't sleep, I don't digest, I don't, and that's like, oh, okay, well, we'll get there, but let's put the fires out first.
Yeah.
However, it's going to depend on the person a little bit, but especially keto or carnivore, at least most clients, it's 70 to 80% fat. And I think you have to have the right amount of protein to run your body. And if things are stressful, especially, or you haven't fed yourself and have been under eating for a long time, you need fat. And fat is the diamond of the body, or it's just essential, especially for women. If we don't have enough body fat, we can't procreate life. Like the building blocks to create a human, it has to feel safe, and fat is essential, because if there was a famine and you don't have fat on your body, you die. So that's something that the body will protect at all costs, that we need the body to feel safe to be able to actually lose body fat. And, just talking about, but fat in itself. So the macros are going to depend. I usually say for people, about 1 gram per pound of lean body weight to start. That also has a range, because lean body weight can be your ideal body weight or lean, because if you're doing some resistance training and you're a 160 pound woman, your frame should be maybe around 140 pounds, 140 pounds to 140 grams of protein. Maybe that is too much for you. Maybe that's enough for you if you're working out. But if you have 20% body fat at 140 pounds, then it's going to be less. Maybe it's 115, 120 grams of protein. So we try to find the right amount, once I work together with people, what that is for them. But fat is always higher in grams than protein. That is a non-negotiable. It's at least equal the majority of the time. Most women need it to be higher. It ends up being, like I said, about 70 to 80% fat. I don't love the very high fat, low protein approaches either, because then it can be good maybe for a short time, but it can also have some negative effects as well. So we try to find the sweet spot. Then when it gets into like individuality of the person, how long have they been dieting? What do they need? What's their current body weight? What other, illnesses or anything that they have? Because when people are trying to just lose weight, and we have to have all the other things in place first. You need to be sleeping through the night. You need to be digesting your food. You need to not have like crazy cramps or electrolyte imbalances. So all of these other pieces have to be good for us to really get into the weight. And, there may need to be some cleanup and some autophagy, which, I like some fasting as well, but in a very healthy, supportive of your hormones way. But there's also a need to get your hunger hormones signaling properly again, and that your body knows we have excess body fat and we don't need to hang on to it. So there's a lot in there, but yeah, for me, it's never just, what are the macros? What are this? It's like, so much more.
Well, I get that question a lot. So like a general rule for people starting that want to start eating this way and are trying to lose weight, you would say 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight of both protein and fat, but then it might need to be adjusted after that and maybe make the fat a little bit higher and the protein a little bit lower.
Yeah, I would say that is a minimum of fat. Usually, even starting out, I would say 30 grams over your amount of protein you're eating a day, every day. So you're having at least a little buffer, because that 1-to-1 ratio isn't going to be exactly high enough in fat. And especially if there's other things going wrong, you need that extra fat to heal, to calm the nervous system, to, repair, because your inflammation process, we need fat to help that inflame. And then, even though inflammation's a bad word, when people think, it's actually, we need it. We just don't want it to be chronic. We want it to be, okay, if you get a cut or you hurt your ankle, it's going to inflame because you want that heat. It's going to speed up the reaction time. It's what we want for the body to heal. But then we want it to go away because it healed. And it's that chronic inflammation that's the problem. But fat is needed for inflammation. So we can help give that the nutrients it needs and get those, they're called prostaglandins, but very complicated process that just helps the body calm inflammation with fat. So it can really be helpful if you're having other issues. Autoimmune type symptoms, things like that are where we absolutely need enough fat as well.
Okay. And what about under eating? I know that I have an issue with under eating. If I'm not tracking my calories, if I go maybe a month without tracking, when I finally do track, I realize I'm back down to like 1,000 calories a day. Like it's somewhere in my head that I need to eat less, right? And I know so many other women deal with that issue. And so do you see people that either gain or get stuck by not eating enough? Because I get a lot of pushback about that. When I talk about under eating, I get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I see a lot of under eating. I just had a client send me her macros. She's not only training for a half marathon, which I'm not a fan of chronic cardio either. So that's another story. But if it's your goal, and she was eating 1,000 calories a day. And I'm like, oh my God. So, because when we start working together, I do have people at least get an idea. Like, I need you to track for a week so that you can send it to me so I can at least say, that's way too little, or that's, okay, let's wait and see how this goes. Do I think people have to track forever? No. I think once we get the body signals correct, the hormones in balance, with the circadian rhythm and other things like that, then tracking is not essential. But under eating for women is huge because we have this ingrained that we just need to eat less and move more and everything's going to be perfect. And you just have to kill it in the gym, and you don't have to go to the gym at all. And for most clients, I have to tell them to stop doing the workouts they're doing because they're doing too much and they're killing themselves, making themselves hungry, and then not eating enough. And now it's just stresses here where before maybe it would have been just here.
Yeah, it's amazing how under eating can do that to your body. Making sure that we are nourished and full and satisfied all the time is so important. But I think for so many women, our hunger cues are messed up from all of our years of starving ourselves and binging and eating processed foods that it's so hard to figure out where you need to be. So I like to tell people there's nothing wrong with tracking your calories, right?
No, it's when there's an obsession with calories. That's the problem. And you can track, like I said, if you need to get an idea, but the obsession comes in where, well, I went over my macros or anything like that. Well, how do you know what you needed that day? Your body is not this perfect calculator. Were you outside in the sun and need to make vitamin D and need more fat and more energy to do that? Then listen to your body that day. And or there's other women that, like, if they're just starving all the time and there's no off switch, maybe they're not getting the proper signaling of leptin, which you can overeat and overeat and overeat. So it's on both sides. And our stress hormones actually delay hunger. So cortisol will delay hunger. So if a woman or anybody, I say women because I work with, it's like 80% women. I have a few men, but women are who I see most of the time. Sorry, can you hear that? Okay. All right. I was kind of loud, but women are the ones that struggle the most with weight and need the most support. Women usually don't eat enough. And if your cortisol is too high and you're having coffee in the morning and you're not eating and you're delaying and delaying, you're running off stress hormones. You're running off adrenaline. You're running off cortisol. And you might feel really energized because you got those stress hormones, but that is delaying the hunger signals. And then you don't eat until maybe noon or 1 o'clock. And then, okay, ate a little salad because that's what I'm supposed to have. And by 3 o'clock, you are eating anything and everything in sight because you pushed that for so long. And cortisol being too high will also cause fat gain and not allow you to burn your body fat. So the stress has to be in check. Under eating is a stress, and all these stress hormones will not give you proper hunger signals. So there's a lot to unpack even in that.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah, thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. So I'm Sarah Franklin, and inthebuffwellness.com or in the Buff Wellness on Instagram, TikTok, all the things, and have one-to-one consults as well as some group options or even just an ebook if you're not ready to work with anybody one-on-one yet.
That's awesome. Hopefully this video will help some people and help them get their hormones in check and understand that fat is not bad for you.
That is good for you. You need fat.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys for watching. Be well, be safe, eat some meat. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.